Well, let's get more on the situation of these members of Congress in the United States and the senators writing to the White House suggesting that the Agoa summit be moved from South Africa this year because there is a chance we might be removed from the African Growth and Opportunity Program in the United States. All of this, of course, because of our relationship, our perceived relationship around Russia. Our government says we have a non-aligned stance on the Russia-Ukraine war. Professor Christopher Isike is a professor of African politics and international relations at the Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria. Professor, good afternoon to you. How do you see what the Americans are doing here? To me, it looks like they're trying to put us under a lot of economic pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I describe it. Enormous pressure. But it is not totally unexpected, because what they are trying to question in South Africa's neutrality on this matter is the military drills that were conducted between South Africa, Russia and China in February, and then they talk about the Russian military cargo that landed at the South African Air Force in April. For them, these are indicators of non-neutrality, and so they are trying to pressure South Africa, to bow down, or not give concessions to Russia in the way that the US would not want. So it's actually a lot of pressure indeed.
How should our government respond? If we were kicked out of Agoa, I mean, the car industry, other industries, business leaders would be absolutely furious. It would probably lead to quite a lot of division in our society, never mind the economic impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I've always maintained that South Africa's national and economic interests should guide its interactions with any country in the world. And so it must determine those interests. Right now, as you've indicated, South Africa's economic interest will be jeopardized greatly if it takes a largely political decision, to continue to insist that it will, like we have heard, among top ranking officers of the ANC, insist that South Africa is a free country and is free to, host the Russian president if he comes in August. We've also heard the former president, acting president of South Africa, Halema Motlanthe, state categorically that Putin would not come. And these are the kind of considerations that should drive how South Africa responds. It needs to show to its partners, its trading partners, not just the United States, but the EU as well, and of course to the international community, that it's a country of rules and regulations, and it abides by its commitment to a rules-based international system, and that it will act in the best interest of itself and then of the international system. And one way to do this is to actually be neutral and not get into any kind of quagmire that would put it in further jeopardy.
Professor, there's so many different ways to look at this, but the way I see it at the moment, China may actually be the key to all of this. So they're the one country that could host the BRICS summit for us. They're the one country whose economy we will be tied to for a very long time in the future. China could push us to host the BRICS summit, to host Russia. I don't see how we would be able to resist China. If we hosted the Russian President Vladimir Putin, the US would push us away, which would then push us even closer to China. But the US would know that would happen and wouldn't want to push us closer to Russia and China and BRICS. And I can't help but feel that South Africa, all of us, are a pawn in a game of global chess, and the kings, queens, and the knights are just jumping all over us.
Absolutely, Stephen. I don't think I could have described the situation any better. We're between the devil and the deep blue sea, and that's why I say the best way out of it is to define our national interest and act in a manner that shows that we're acting in our economic interest. And being neutral does not mean that we cannot do business with Russia, for example, or do business with China or the United States for that matter. It simply means that we will not be embroiled in any kind of military relations that could be interpreted as a way of taking sides with Russia in this instance. So it's an economic diplomacy that would require a lot of tact, but clear-cut communication, and then acting in a way that is consistent with, that particular stance that South Africa needs to take. The issue is that South Africa is also being pressured in many ways by Russia when Vladimir Putin insists that he will attend the conference in person. The question must always be, what is South Africa's interest? Is Putin's insistence on coming in person in South Africa's interest or Russia's interest? That's more in Russia's interest in his game with the United States. How does it benefit South Africa? Doesn't. So South Africa should be able to take a stance, either to decide to tell Putin not to come, cancel his invitation, or to ask China to take it over. If both countries are willing to have South Africa continue to be in BRICS and for South Africa to benefit from the advantages of BRICS, because we must also understand, Stephen, that this is not just only about the Russia-Ukraine war. It's also about the potential challenge that BRICS represents to the international monetary system as we have it, right? So it's a bigger long-term game that the United States is trying to play here. South Africa must really, really sit down and ask itself, where will it benefit the most and where should it pitch its tent? If it feels that it can benefit from both sides, then it must play a game that is absolutely neutral along the lines of the non-aligned movement and its principles, while continuing to advocate for a much more inclusive and equal world.
Professor Christopher Isike, really appreciate the time. Professor of African Politics and International Relations at the University of Pretoria.